All righty, Live Oak. Good morning. All right. I've had quite the good and awful week. We allowed to say that? So let me get my notes going here. Going to be continuing on Joshua, and we'll throw that first slide up there on Renew Yourself. The next one, that's the title for today. Um, so my week, I'll update you some more of my parents. I'm better off with my stress now. I spent another fun-filled week in Ohio in a dead quiet house with, hold your ears, kids, no internet or TV. So read a lot. Okay. And so my parents, dad, my one job was to get dad from rehab to a secure nursing home with mom. So I got that accomplished. But that's harder than you think. Monday and Tuesday, he wanted it, fought it, had no idea what's going on, couldn't remember why he's there. Both of them is a mess. And then Wednesday, you don't just throw him in the car when he can't even get in his own wheelchair. You have to pay for transport, which was a really nice guy, and he hauled him over there and got him in. Thursday visited with them, and then there was so much anger. I tried to get a Friday flight, couldn't get one. NATO was in town, of all things, so it's like, I'm not going to spend 350 more bucks to fly home Friday, so flew him Saturday. My brother goes, did you go visit him Friday? No. Why not? I didn't want to. I just spent 4 difficult days. I'm sorry at some point, but they're safe. They got the care they need. Mom's memory resets after every nap and maybe in 30 minutes. It's just, they can't live on their own in the home anymore. They've done it real well until the hip broke, and mom just kind of randomly goes unconscious periodically. So it's like so frail. Um, you just hurt for them. Folks, when we talk about renew yourself, and today is about getting ready. So life comes at you, stuff's coming, right? And one of the things you would think would be obvious that we don't plan for is getting older. If you don't die, you get older. I don't know why it's such a surprise. Okay. So it's going to happen. John and Mel were doing some study on it, and Mel was telling me about it. And it looks like the studies, if you kind of program yourself, odds are you'll do a little better. Like, I'm not as strong as I used to be. Oh well, I'm still vertical, right? I forget more. Yep. I'm not as smooth or fast. I never was, but now I'm slower. It just, stuff happens. And the creaks and the moans and just, okay, it's coming. It'll get more. And if you kind of go into that, you're probably going to have, or you've got a better chance at being more at peace. If you fight it and hate it and get angry about it, then guess what's going to come out? And then, who knows, someday. The other thing is sign all the documents and talk to whoever's will be in charge of you someday, if you live long enough, children, friends, whatever, and say, here's what I'd like, but here's all the permission to do whatever you think is best. Because if you don't have it, it's a nightmare. And if you don't put some assets and trusts and stuff, they can't even use your funds to take care of you. So talk to a financial planner. So it's not a surprise, right? We know it's coming. Things happen. But there's lots of that in life where we don't plan for. Okay, guess what? Your kids are going to throw up one morning and they can't go to school. Got a plan? Seriously. I mean, it's not like you know it's going to happen. So you need a plan for that parent. You know a car's going to get wrecked. Something's going to happen. Somebody's going to get sick. Jobs change. You know you'll probably want to eat lunch today and tomorrow. You might want to have a meal plan or groceries. So we go into life a lot of times and we just stumble along, and things that really shouldn't be surprises surprise us. It's about getting ready, being ready. Tough times come, trials come. In our relationships, we have difficulties. They're coming. So get ready. And that's what today is really about, getting ready. So the Hebrew people have been headed for the promised land for a long time, 40 years plus now. And so they've crossed the Jordan. Now it's time for a fight. We got to go in. We got to fight. It's time to gear up and go. And I'm going to share, actually, I can do it today in all of 5 minutes, pretty much everything we know about their tactics in the ancient Near East at that time. Because we don't know zip is why. But based on military studies and just being a police officer and all, some things we can make some reasonable guesses. I probably have better odds than most because of background. But I remember when I'd go to work, especially at night on patrol, I tucked the family in, and my briefing's at 10:30, and I headed in, and you get there, and I'm just, here we are. And you stumble into briefing, and you sit down, and you get ready, and the sergeant will come in and say, hey, you need to watch out for this area because we're getting some break-ins. Be looking for a red Dodge license plate, blah, 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 blah. I would always kind of go red Dodge pickup, XYZ. I'd remember like some unique letters. And honestly, if it's in Louisville that night, we're going to find it. We will find it. Yeah, detectives think it's a suspect vehicle and a bunch of theft. Get them pulled over if they commit a traffic violation. Everybody commits traffic violations. You can't go 2 miles without committing some kind of traffic violation. And if they got warrants, get them identified, just et cetera. We'll find it. And so by the time I came out of briefing, you kind of got, I've got everything turned off. At home, the problems, who's sick, what's going on. And I'm kind of going in and out here today. I don't know if I didn't tighten something. If we have to use a hand mic, just bring it up here. So you're ready. And then when I'm getting my car ready, I check my equipment, I check my gear. If my vest strap doesn't feel right, I fix it right then. Because if it's irritating you for 8 or 12 hours, that's just going to get old. You get your boots tied just right. You make sure you're good to go. You duck your head, and you go to work. You go into whatever it's going to be. It might even be a fight. Well, they're headed for the fight now, and that's what's happening. Thank you. Love technology. So that's where we're headed. And so, folks, as we go through life, be ready for that. But for now, a lot of us have family members who are going through getting old. God, be with the folks who are aging. Give them peace. Open the right doors for care. Give the caregivers strength and wisdom and, again, your peace. That we can help our loved ones transition this time of life that can be difficult and yet not unexpected, that we'll walk with you till the day you call them home. In Christ's name, amen. So as we're getting ready, let's do a little review on where we've been. So we're going to throw up a few things about where we've been. We're going to do a review of Joshua 1 and 2. Here's a map, as Eric has pointed out several times. They're going to come in from the east. I call it the easy east because it's not as fortified as the west of the Jordan. So everything in this area of the world, or this section, is east and west of the Jordan. That's the biggie, okay? So, Mississippi divides the United States. Well, this is their big division. So they're coming in from the easy east. Then they're going to start with a big target down here of Jericho, just north of the Dead Sea. It's a fortified, very strong city. It's going to be a tough one to beat. But if you beat the big dog, everybody else starts shaking in their boots. Then they're going to have their campaigns. They're going to go north and south. They're going to wind up taking, honestly, they keep taking the easy parts. The coast is a little harder. Still had some pockets they never really accomplished in the coast and never did do well in the mountain areas, which you know about the mountain areas even today. You don't just conquer them. They're too difficult. So they're going in, and that's our plan here. And so let's give a couple of things where we've been. The next slide. God gives the promise first. Eric taught on this. I'll give you every place you set your foot, your territory extend. From this whole area of the promised land. No one will be able to stand against you. I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. That's a big deal. I'll be your God. You'll be my people. Repeated over and over and over the decades with the prophets. That's our relationship. I'm your God. You're my people. That's who we are. Okay? That's repeated over and over and over. Okay? And then you'll lead these people to inherit the land. First Moses and now Joshua. He's my guy. He's taking you in. And it's real important, especially in this ancient Near Eastern mentality. We have a leader we can trust and follow. And then you have your tribal leaders in the different areas. Next slide. So as we go in, remember Joshua, the son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies into Shittim. Go look over the land, especially check out Jericho. We got to get some intel. Again, there are no satellites. There are no spy planes. There are no drones. There's no lighting, okay, unless you light a fire or a lamp. You go look around with your eyes. And I'm sure they dressed out like everybody else dressed. They blended in. Especially Jericho has a lot of travelers coming in and out, so they're sliding around, looking, seeing what's going on, getting the lay of that land. And they go in, they're into the house of a prostitute. And so where would you expect guys coming in and out of? A house like that. And there they are. Now, somehow they got spotted. The king of Jericho said, look, some Israelites are here checking out the land. But again, if you dress like everybody else and you're looking like the other merchants, who knows? And back then, there actually is another story, you have to look it up sometimes, the Gibeonites, that how did they tell who was the bad guy? Well, they could say Shibboleth, but when they say, hey, say Shibboleth, all they could say was Sibboleth. Seriously, it's like me pronouncing Japanese or something, or I can't roll my R's in Spanish. Can't do it. So they identified the other group because they couldn't say this particular word. All right? Well, how do you figure it out, right? And so if you said Sibboleth, you die right now. So, sorry. But, how do you check out who's the good guy, who's the bad guy? And so they get in there, and so the king of Jericho, they hear about, well, we think some strangers went into Rahab. The men came to you. They came out to spy the whole land, and he taught that story to us. And so there they are. They're getting ready. They're checking out the land. Next slide. We're going to keep going here. And Joshua, instead of thinking of it is historical, but quit thinking of it as a history book. Think of it as the prophets, God's word to us. This is something God did. We don't get all the details we would want in history. We don't get all these facts and specifics that we like in our history books. We are getting what God is doing through his people and lessons for us to apply for us even today. All right, God's word to us. Key passage is in 21:43 through 45. And the no falling words, as our commentator Davis put it, none of God's promises or words will fall and hit the dirt. And let's look at that passage. So the Lord gave Israel all the land he had sworn to give them their ancestors. They took possession of it, I can't say Sibboleth, and settled there. The Lord gave them rest on every side, east and west, just as he had sworn to their ancestors. Not one of their enemies withstood them. The Lord gave all their enemies into their hands. Not one of the Lord's good promises to Israel failed. There's that, not one. God's promises, words, fell to the ground. It's an excellent translation. I mean, you could put, they didn't fall to the ground, but it doesn't really capture the meaning of they didn't fail. They came through, okay? Everyone was fulfilled. And so there's a key passage here in Joshua. If you're going to memorize one passage in Joshua, a verse, to be your memory cue for Joshua, that would be the one, a good one to pick. So we keep going. So now it's time to enter the land, and they're going to head in. Joshua 3 and 4, the ark leads them. That's the first step in this process. First, the ark. Why? Because it's God leading us. That's our cue for this is about God. That's our visual. And stand back. We all want to see the ark out there. That reminds us it's God heading us into this scary territory like crossing a raging river. Consecrate yourself. Set yourself apart. This is a spiritual thing. This is going to take all we got. You best be ready. God is leading us. God is leading Joshua. Remember, the leadership is just critically important. And then at the end, they picked up these 12 big stones, made an altar, a memorial. When the kids say, what was this all about? This was when God led us through. This is when it all started. Remember, and we did talk about one of the greatest enemies to faith is forgetfulness, remembering what God has done. My wife, for years, she's kept a journal, and she'll go back and be reminded of all the answered prayers, all the things God has done that we just don't remember sometimes, and it encourages us for tomorrow. So here we are, here we're ready to go. God is leading us, and Eric's title for this last week, I was using Consecrate Yourselves. His was When Barriers Appear in Our Way. Remember, it's the same God today. God leads us, and he will lead you if you let him and if you do it. All right? I try not to underestimate the ability of us not to do what God wants. I know I'm supposed to say everything positive, but doggone it, we just need to do it his way. And we have the same command to show God to the world. God is going to reveal through us that he is active and what he's all about. So here we are today at Renew Yourself. God can handle it, whatever the it. You'll be a light, no falling words, and we begin with Renew Yourself. And in 5:1, kind of our transition passage, they know the Hebrews are coming. They know it. There's no surprise. I mean, if you got 40,000 armed young men, how many others do you have? Children and old folks and grandfolks and aunts and uncles and support crews and the guys who can't fight anymore and the young guys, you got everybody. So there's lots and lots of people. Now, when all the Amorite kings west of the Jordan and all the Canaanite kings along the coast heard how the Lord had dried up the Jordan before the Israelites until they crossed over, their hearts melted in fear and they no longer had the courage to face the Israelites. That's going to be real important as we talk about strategies and tactics. So they've heard. And what does the city need? It needs to be secure. They do it with geography. They do it with man-made items. So they had walls. That's something we make. A lot of times the city will be on a mountain. Or they'll have a giant river right by them. Or a cliff. Or the ocean. Something where we don't have to protect that side like we have to do others. We just keep an eye on it, but we post our troops on the walls. So the Jordan is a major barrier to protect them from the enemy. And what just happened? God opened it up and they walked through. And here we go. Warfare in the ancient Near East. Little is known, folks. It's just not out there. You look and look. There's a few little clues we get. Early on, it's small groups. It's tribes. It's raiding parties. They fought for fields and pastures, livestock, crops. They use clubs and spears and bow and arrows eventually show up. It's villages, and then they grow and get more secure as they get bigger, and they combine their villages to become small cities, and the cities are kind of their own city-state. So for Jericho, that's the big hub of that area, and so they get stronger. They reinforce it more. The cities needed what? Security. We talked about that. They need water. They need transportation. That's what you got to have if you're going to maintain a city. You need to be secure from the enemy, so they don't just take your stuff. You need a water supply, fresh water, and especially if you can have fresh water inside the city walls, because when the siege comes, when the enemy blocks anybody in or out, you can't go get water anymore. And then you need transportation. How do we get goods in and out? How do we have commerce? How do we take care? So that's critical. And typically, the transportation may be a waterway or land. So, push it way back there, thousands of years. And they fought to control the land, the water, the transportation. Slowly, they started to have militias. The enemy's coming. We pull together our fighting people and our tough guys, and we're going to go fight. All right. So that's kind of the early stage. It's the Bronze Age. Later on, it's the Iron Age. That was one of the cues, or one of the advantages the coast had, because they had the secret to iron before the Israelites learned it. And you had to go buy your iron. And if my bronze sword hits your iron sword, the bronze sword's going to, chip and crack. And they're heavier and they're slower to wield. They can't get real sharp. A lot of poking and prodding. Spears were a lot more popular because you got more distance and, you'd be farther away from the enemy. So that's the age that we're at here. Swords, pikes, clubs, shields, bow, leather armor. Well, doesn't that make you feel real secure? Leather armor, all right? I was reading a story about later on with the Greeks and the centurions and all, and what would the guys do? They would take, oils from animals, fat, and they would have to work it into their leather armor all the time to keep it subtle, keep it from drying out, because that's all you got. Maybe it'll stop a knife blow or something, or to the edge, or help you out a little bit. So constantly maintaining those things. So, and they use surprise, ambush, overwhelm, and siege. By that, you tried to sneak in before they were ready, but that's not easy, so you have to use small raiding parties. But as you get bigger, you can't really do it. The Hebrews, they know they're coming. There's just too many. You try to overwhelm my army versus your army. And later on through history, kings would send their armies, and they would rather fight out on the plains where our army could overwhelm your army. If you get into a siege, so we surround your city, we can't get in. And say, like Jericho, with these huge, wide, tall walls. And it's brick, it's earth, it's rock. You don't just dig right through it. And, you know, if you're hand digging, what are the guys on the top of the wall doing to you? They're dropping arrows and rocks and oil and anything else they can find down on you. Or you try to dig under. All this takes lots and lots of time. Or you try to starve them out. Well, if they have enough supplies inside, they could have supplies for a year or two. And what do you need for your army who's surrounding this? Supplies. And a lot of times when you read your studies on the ancient Near East by scholars who studied ancient documents but never were soldiers, they miss the logistics. I'm going to say it again. 40,000 troops. 1 or 2 meals a day. Every day. And when you go fight, you can't carry all your stuff. So somebody's hauling that stuff behind them. And you got people getting cut and hurt, and hopefully you can get them repaired. And if you can't, you got to take care of them until you pretty much die or get infected. And all that support's going on. And then as they go through their campaign, you don't just hit it and leave it. Be like searching a building. You know, I and a couple people, I'd rather have 3 people search a building. Why? Because you come to a hallway, nobody there. You get in the hallway. We got a door. You go in the door. Send 2 in the door. So you check. There's another door. You go in that door. We had a rule, no more than 2 doors. Because if you keep going, now I've lost somebody. And I know there's another person in this building with a gun right now that I don't lose track of, because I might surprise them. So we say, come back. Well, what if I don't leave somebody looking in the hall? If I come in the door, I don't have the hall anymore. The back guy could be there. Well, when you conquer land, it's kind of like that. When I take the land, they had to leave somebody to protect it, right? They had to start establishing it and start growing more crops and more livestock, because we got to support the rest of this campaign across the Jordan to the north and the south. So as they're moving in, they're losing some troops and they're losing support to build their logistics and keep it going. This is a massive plan. You know, we look at it and we kind of go, God just did it. Boom. They fought and sweat and died and fed and got hungry and took care of all this. They say one of the ancient food sources all the time was they always had big pots of barley soup. I don't know that I've ever had barley soup. Apparently it wasn't appealing, because they took every scrap they had and threw it in the barley soup. And if you didn't have anything else to eat, you could get some of this nasty, but I'll stay alive barley soup. That's supporting your troops as you're going through there, okay? So there's all these logistics going on, and then if you got down to a siege, it's just going to be hard. So, and Eric's going to take us on into Jericho next week, and again, we don't know how God did it. I'm kind of a fan of an earthquake. I mean, it doesn't matter. God did it, you know, somehow. I don't know how he stopped the Jordan River. Again, some say maybe it dammed up because of some rock slides, and it lasted however long, and they got across. Works for me. I don't know. There was no wand. He did it. Typically, he'll use stuff like that, but I don't know. It doesn't matter. He just did it for his people. And God does things for us, and sometimes we know how he did it, sometimes we don't. I'd love to know more of how they got in. How much broke down? How much did they... But somebody's got to go first, and you're not going to make it, right? Because everybody's standing there while you're trying to fight your way in, and everybody's trying to get around you to get on in. And that's what's going on. So, and what do you try to do? They tried to target the leaders first, tried to create fear and propaganda. We're going to see lots of that in Joshua. fear and noise, and God is active. And why aren't they attacking? Why are they marching? Why? Why? What are they trying to do? What's their plan? We're worried. We keep watching. We can't go to sleep. I can't rotate my shifts because at any moment they could come in, and while it's wearing us down and wearing us down and wearing us down, and then boom, bang, loud, he'll talk about it. Here we go. And if you get the leader, you wipe out the will to fight. Territory, plunder, religion. War was about competing gods and stuff. And as they're coming in, here we go. Whose God's going to win? So that's what we got going on here. That's kind of, what little bit we know. We don't know a whole lot about how it worked, how it happened. And so over this time, and then honestly, it was difficult for them to maintain. In the Judges period, I think I made a note here to give you one example. There were times when, now we got later on after they settled, there's 12 tribes, right? They're all spread out across the map. And there would be a common enemy come in, or a big enemy, to take on one tribe or a couple tribes. And so they needed help. And what they would do is they called the other tribes to come help. They weren't doing that real well at one point. And so the judges, they'd pull them together. And then finally, they're just struggling to try to back each other. And so they're starting to saying, the enemies are getting bigger. Our opponents are getting larger. We need a king. We need a king. We need a king. You get to that day, you get Saul. He's anointed to be king. They got a big challenge coming, and what happens? Saul hears about it. It says that Saul was out working in his field. He's like plowing his field. He's just, a farmer like everybody else, taking care of his crops, and king. And they come and they say, hey, we need help. We got to pull together, and you know how hard that's been. And if you read that story, he takes 2 of his oxen, cuts them into 12 parts, sends the parts out with a messenger, and so they carry that shank, head, whatever, and they walk into your tribal leader and say, Benjamin, here's the deal. Saul the king says, come help us, or you're going to be like this cow. The other 11 are going to turn on you now. So they sent a whole bunch, and they supported it. Because again, you got to work together on this stuff, and that tended to be a challenge over and over for them. So, where are we at? Let's hit our next slide, and we'll keep going. I did. I actually showed you a little bit. Here's the slide again to remind us how we're doing it. Next slide. So as we head on into chapter 5, it's time to fulfill the requirements of the law. At that time, the Lord said to Joshua, make flint knives and circumcise the Israelites again. So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the Israelites at Gibeath Harloth. Now, this is why he did so. All those who came out of Egypt, all the men of military age, died in the wilderness on the way, leaving Egypt. And all the people that came out who had been circumcised are now gone, but the people born in wilderness hadn't been circumcised. The guys had not followed the procedure for the Hebrew people. And so it's time to renew our commitment. That's a rule. That's a law. It's still done today. Berit Milah, okay? My Hebrew pronunciation is terrible, I just read it. On the 8th day of a little boy's life, unless there's some medical reason, they do this procedure still today in the Hebrew people. It's usually at the synagogue. It can also be at a home. It's a part of their dedication to God as Hebrew people. But they hadn't been doing it. We need to fix some things. We need to get this right. Yet you do ask the question, why haven't they been doing it? I might be able to answer that on our next section here in a minute. But at this point, I want us to stop for a minute and think, are we ready? Are we? They had 40 years to learn to fight, learn to work together, and learn to get ready, and now we're going to take the promised land. We're ready. We got 3 days to say it's go time. Let's go. They come across, they're going to get their first really major fight. Jericho is not an easy target. It's going to be tough to take it. They don't know how God's going to work yet. But they know they got to take it. And then suddenly somebody realizes, Joshua goes, whoa, time out, time, wait. We are not within the law. How can we say we're God's people if we're not doing God's stuff? We are out of compliance. I'm sending troops in that haven't been circumcised, didn't follow the rules. And that doesn't sound like a big deal to us. It's a big deal. It's a big deal in the Hebrew culture. Remember, as we studied with Christ and even the Pharisees, and the law was who they were. It's what kept them together. It's what made them a people in the country. That's why they were so dedicated to observing every bit of it. It was the glue that held them together to be dedicated to God. And Joshua looks at this and goes, wait, God's saying, we got to fix this. We got to be fully dedicated. Let's hit the next slide. So maybe we get a clue in this section because we don't know. It doesn't say why, but I'll give you what I can. Then the Lord said to Joshua, today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you. So the place has been called, rolled away, Gilgal, to this day. That's about as good as I think we find for a clue. I'll give you a Kenny guess. They hadn't been doing the procedure because they felt like they were under curse for disobeying God and not being allowed into the promised land and didn't feel worthy. They'd failed. They're under punishment. We're outside of God's will. We're hoping for the day when we're back in as we wander day after day. And they didn't like walk. You know, as a kid, I thought all they did was walk every day for 40 years. They would go to a location, set up, be there however long, go to another location, you know, keep going. But they weren't in their land. They're out in the wilderness. I think that's about as good a guess as I can give you. They were outside God's will. But now, we're ready. We've been getting ready. We're dedicated. We're willing to risk our lives to what God has called us to do. And we need to straighten out a few things, including this religious ceremony that we had pledged to be a part of. So the place has been called Gilgal to this day. On the evening of the 14th day of the month, while camped at Gilgal in the plains of Jericho, the Israelites then celebrated Passover. The day after the Passover, that very day, they ate some of the produce of the land. How have they been eating till now? Manna, right? God's been feeding them, right? Unleavened bread and roasted grain. The manna stopped the day after they ate this food from the Lord. There was no longer any manna for the Israelites, but that day they ate the produce of Canaan. So now they're back to taking care of their needs with their own grain and produce and crops. And cattle and sheep. Well, they didn't have cattle. What? Yeah, cattle, sheep? I don't know. Sheep's a biggie. Totally blank on that one. So I can't. What's the word? So you have crops and you have livestock. Thank you. All right. Like I said, as I'm aging. So anyway, so now they're taking care of themselves, and it's this sense of rolled away. The punishment is done. Let's go. Which is pretty cool. That's a lesson in itself. Even with God, we have consequences and responsibilities. And sometimes we have to deal with it. But they'll end. We learn. We get back at it. It's rolled away. And we get a new start. And so at this point, I kind of asked this question, how about you and me? How about you? You missing anything? Are you before God and your family? Well, add it. I'm not real big on the psychology of these things. I'm more big on fix it. You can work out the psychology among yourselves. You need to remove something? Get rid of it, okay? Get rid of it. Anything need to be adjusted to grow? I got asked the question when I was in Ohio. I asked my brother, he was asking me, hey, you still golfing? You know, I did try golf for a while. The kids were younger, and it's such a fun sport. You were dressed for it last week, yeah? It was a great time. Really enjoyed it. I could not justify the time. Even, I could probably afford the public courses or something, but it's 5 or 6 hours no matter how you cut it. And with the kids and jobs, like to keep my wife, I couldn't. It was something it wasn't a right or wrong. It didn't fit the needs of my family, so I needed to prioritize and adjust. And some things are little, that's kind of a big deal though, right? You really want to do something, but what's best for your family? So you find something that works better for your family. And life's like that. Sometimes we've got things that are missing. We need to add it. God's been on our conscience for this for a while. We need to do it. Sometimes we got things we shouldn't have and we need to get rid of it. Get rid of it. Just let it go. And sometimes we need to make some adjustments. We need to prioritize what's important before God and our families, what really matters. And you're always blessed with that. I don't miss golf. I got 2 wonderful granddaughters this week. Another busy week for the Kinneys. Look at that blessing. So just recognize that. So they celebrated Passover. The sins are washed away in this sense. They've been renewed. And here they go, forgiveness and renewal. So let's hit the summary here. It's all been rolled away. Your punishment's complete. Your wandering is over. Time to enter your promised land. They celebrated Passover. They remembered what God has done. They ate the food of the land. Wow. This is a new level in their lives and who they are. And life comes along and there's all kinds of new levels. Teresa and I, together with no kids in the house, is an entirely different way than we've had all these years, right? And it's wonderful, and it's different, and it's fun, and it's challenging, and it's all those things as we progress on through. And as I look back, youth, you guys are going to New Mexico. About 50 years ago, I did my first trip to New Mexico to do some projects in some impoverished areas. Probably 5 years after that, Teresa and I were bringing some college kids to do the same thing for a couple of years. So many people in need, so many memories, and here that comes full circle with you guys, blessing some folks as we go through life. Ate the fruit of the land. Last slide. So what do we got? We have the same God, folks. So renew yourself. Let it all, go to God, and if you've got something to confess, confess it. Get forgiveness. Deal with it. Let it all be rolled away. And know God is trustworthy. Who He is and His promises and way of living in our lives will never hit the dirt empty. No falling words. God, may we follow You fully, whatever the challenge. May we look to You and trust Your wisdom. We ask You to look inside us and show us what needs to be cleaned up, added, removed, adjusted, that we can be fully dedicated to You and the loved ones around us in our community and be that light, first to our own families, then to our church and our community. That as You guide us to follow Your will and carry Your light to others, we will trust You. We will consecrate ourselves and be renewed through Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you all.